Zelensky tells BBC Putin has started WW3 and must be stopped. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky continues to send out a firm message of defiance. When we met this weekend in the government headquarters in Kyiv, he said that far from losing, Ukraine would end the war victorious. He was firmly against paying the price for a ceasefire deal demanded by President Vladimir Putin, which is withdrawing from strategic ground that Russia has failed to capture despite sacrificing tens of thousands of soldiers. Putin, Zelensky told me, has already started World War III, and the only answer was intense military and economic pressure to force him to step back. I believe that Putin has already started it. The question is how much territory he will be able to seize and how to stop him. Russia wants to impose on the world a different way of life and change the lives people have chosen for themselves. What about Russia's demand for Ukraine to hand over the 20 of the eastern region of Donetsk that it still holds, a line of towns Ukraine calls fortress cities, as well as more land in the southern regions of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia? Isn't that, I asked, a reasonable request if it produces a ceasefire? I see this differently. I don't look at it simply as land. I see it as abandonment, weakening our positions, abandoning hundreds of thousands of our people who live there. That is how I see it. And I am sure that this withdrawal would divide our society. But isn't it a good price to pay if that satisfies President Putin? Do you think it would satisfy him? It would probably satisfy him for a while. He needs a pause, but once he recovers, our European partners say it could take 3 to 5 years. In my opinion, he could recover in no more than a couple of years. Where would he go next? We do not know, but that he would want to continue the war is a fact. I met Volodymyr Zelensky in a conference room inside the heavily guarded government enclave in a well-to-do corner of central Kyiv. In the interview he spoke mostly in Ukrainian. You get a sense of the weight of leadership carried by Zelensky from the diligence of his security guards. Visiting any head of state requires rigorous checks. But entering the presidential buildings in Kyiv takes the process to a level I have rarely experienced before. It is not surprising in a country at war, with a president who has already been targeted by Russia. Despite all that, the man who started as an entertainer, who won the Ukrainian version of Strictly Come Dancing in 2006, and played the role of an unexpected president of Ukraine in a TV comedy, before becoming the real-life president of Ukraine, seems to be remarkably resilient. US President Donald Trump said on the eve of the most recent ceasefire talks in Geneva that Ukraine better come to the table fast. He continues to default to putting more pressure on Ukraine than on Russia. Western diplomats have indicated since last summer that Trump agrees with Putin that territorial concessions from Ukraine to Russia are the key to the ceasefire Trump wants, ideally before this coming summer. Plenty of analysts outside the White House also judge that Ukraine cannot win the war and, without making concessions to Moscow, will lose it. I asked Zelensky whether Trump and the others had a point. Where are you now? Zelensky asked in return. Today you are in Kyiv, you are in the capital of our homeland, you are in Ukraine. I am very grateful for this. Will we lose? Of course not, because we are fighting for Ukraine's independence. Zelensky has often said that Ukraine can win, but what would victory look like? Of course, he said, victory meant restoring normal lives for Ukrainians and ending the killing. But the wider view of victory he presented was all about a global threat that he says comes from Putin. I believe that stopping Putin today and preventing him from occupying Ukraine is a victory for the whole world. Because Putin will not stop at Ukraine. You are not saying that victory is getting all the land back, are you? Well, do it. That is absolutely clear. It is only a matter of time. To do it today would mean losing a huge number of people, millions of people, because the Russian army is large, and we understand the cost of such steps. You would not have enough people, you would be losing them. And what is land without people? Honestly, nothing. And we also don't have enough weapons. That depends not just on us, but on our partners. So as of now that's not possible, but returning to the just borders of 1991, the year Ukraine declared its independence, precipitating the final collapse of the Soviet Union without a doubt, is not only a victory, it's justice. Ukraine's victory is the preservation of our independence, and a victory of justice for the whole world is the return of all our lands. A year ago, Zelensky visited the White House and received a reception one senior Western diplomat described to me as a pre-planned public diplomatic mugging from Donald Trump and his vice president, J.D. Vance. Their argument, in the presence of the world's media, was watched by millions around the world. Trump, just inaugurated as president for the second time, was sending the strongest possible signal that the era of support Zelensky and Ukraine had relied on from President Joe Biden was over. NATO members were already on notice from the new administration. Vance had just got back from shattering Western European illusions about the strength of the Trans-ATL.